I think we're joined by Dr. Rudasingwa. Are you there, sir?
I'm there. How are you doing today?
I'm doing very good. I have to say congratulations to you, and thank you so much for making such a courageous statement and speaking to this very painful issue that has faced your country now for so many years. For you to come forward and to discuss this very candidly is, I think, a great blessing for everybody who's ever cared about what happened to your country.
Yeah, I must say it's a very, very serious matter, and I thank you really for. I didn't know that you read the whole statement for the listeners. Maybe who didn't have an opportunity to read it, and I think that is part of the tragic story of Rwanda. And but as you know, I'm one who believes, and I'm sure I do share this kind of sentiment, that even out of tragedy, sometimes in the long run, something beautiful can emerge out of it. So it's in that spirit that having concealed such a crime for too long, and having been part of propagating it, that I kind of feel a liberated man, because it's like I've cast my burdens down, I've let my burdens down, and I feel very free because I've been able to tell the truth.
Yeah, that is so remarkable. This is, and just to clarify for our listeners, or for them to know, you are, you say in the statement that you actually heard the President Kagame, at that time I guess he was the vice president, he's still a general, say in your presence that he had made the order. Is that right?
Yes. I say in the statement that he's such a callous man. Maybe you being English might be able to translate for listeners what a callous man is like. But, you know, for such a tragic matter, and a matter that touches the death of two presidents, of senior members of the government, of two governments, and also French people, but human beings in general. For somebody to talk about the death of such human beings in such callous manner, to me, I have, of course, suffered it in my heart for too long, but I found it very distasteful, even then, to have listened to somebody talk about it like that. So, yeah, he says it in a very callous manner, and, of course, he said it in the presence of some two other people during that time.
By the way, you address a very important issue, and that, of course, is in all of this tragedy, people have looked for the motives of people. And you say that there was a false theory, or is a false theory, that the act was done by extremist Hutus who wanted to bring on this clash. But when you speak to the motive of the President Kagame, you say that his motive was that he didn't want to continue with the peace process, which would have meant power sharing. Is that right?
Yeah, to be honest, as you know, this is something that stretches back from 1994. And I've kept on, even then when I was a senior member of government and of the RPF, and even after I left the government, I kept on asking myself, what could have been Kagame's motive? Because in many circles, especially since then, Kagame has really been marketed as a very strategic general, as a wise man, as somebody who is very intelligent. But when you put all these things together, whatever his motivations were, his calculations were like a gamble or like an adventure, because in retrospect, I can see Kagame could not go into the competitive process that was supposed to be the culmination of the Arusha peace process. Because remember, the agreement was signed in August 1993, and we were supposed to go for elections within 22 months. And I think most likely Kagame must have put two together and say, how am I going to fare in that kind of competitive political process? That's number one. Number two is that Kagame's mindset is a mindset actually of a gambler or a serial killer, because a serial killer, until he gets the next victim, has a very aggressive appetite for looking for the next victim. But most importantly, like a poor gambler does not know when to cut down losses. I think essentially Kagame didn't see, or he saw and didn't care, that by killing President Habyarimana, that would be a very powerful trigger in a very, very dangerous process. And that some of the first victims could be, and that's what happened, could be the Tutsis and could also be the Hutu moderates. Yeah. And so whatever his motivations were, I think it was a very costly and sad miscalculation.
Mm-hmm. You know, on this program, we have interviewed Mr. Hourigan, a United Nations investigator who came to the conclusion some years back that the President Kagame was responsible, and others. And one of the things they've said is that that was a premeditated act. And the ones who planned it and the ones who carried it out had to know the consequences for the Tutsi people of Rwanda.
Yes.
They had to know.
Yes, I mean, Kagame had to know that, and you don't need to be particularly intelligent or to be particularly an expert.
That means I qualify.
So that in the situation of Rwanda, killing President Habyarimana had consequences, and it was proved right, because once he died, the Tutsis were the victims. And so the whole myth of saying that Kagame, a Tutsi, is the champion of Tutsi is very misplaced. In fact, Kagame does not care about anybody. He does not care about Tutsis. He does not care about Hutus. He does not care about Twas. He simply cares for himself.
And by the way, I mean, as you outlined, in a kind of a diabolical way, it was quite brilliant. It was a sneak attack, and it was vicious in its intention.
Yes.
I mean, you do have to have there's a type of mind very few have that could carry out such an action.
Yes, and remember, by the way, I think that, as you know, certainly my credentials, I was opposed to the regime of President Habyarimana. Mm-hmm. There are things which I felt that as Rwandans were entitled to, that had begun in the previous regime before President Habyarimana came to power. But we must also give him, President Habyarimana, some credit. Some of the things he did prior to his death, which Kagame cannot even dream of. Can you imagine Kagame signing a peace agreement with even people who are not fighting him on the battlefield? I mean, consider that myself and Kayumba and Gahima and Karegeya were sentenced to 20, 25 years in jail. Consider that Victor Ingabire is in jail and many other people. I mean, all these people have no other crime than simply to say something is wrong in Rwanda, we need to rectify it. And you're put in jail, or you're killed, or you plan assassination for simply saying that. But President Habyarimana, the late President Habyarimana, had gone an extra mile. Yes, he might have been dragging his feet, but he had gone an extra mile in signing the agreement, in agreeing to implement it, and he actually died coming back from talking to other colleagues to see how to implement it. I cannot postulate or speculate exactly what was on his mind on that fateful night, but that's the night that that Paul Kagame killed him.
Yeah, it's just amazing. And by the way, your point too in your statement is that you certainly believed, and probably most members of the RPF thought, that they were engaged in a good faith agreement. They didn't know there was going to be this violent interruption of the process.
Absolutely, and by the way, many Rwandans, the RPF members and others, had come to accept that we are now in another mode, and the mode was a peace, the implementing of the peace agreement. And there was excitement in Rwanda, I think, among the majority of the Rwandans. There was excitement among the refugees that finally this violent conflict is coming to an end, and coming to an end in such a way that the refugees will return. We have new institutions in the country. We shall have democratic elections. And so it was a difficult process, even like a marriage. It's as difficult and exciting as a marriage. But I think it was a hopeful note, and by Kagame introducing the wild card of killing President Habyarimana and the President of Burundi and all the people who were on board on that plane, I think he introduced a very dangerous wild card, and we are still reaping the consequences of that.
Yes. And of course, it's going to continue to unfold, and you've made a remarkable contribution to the process of getting at the truth, and without it, you're not going to have a stable basis, as you point out. The French have toyed with a prosecution of President Kagame, or certainly those involved with him. Have they? Can we assume? Let me put it this way: can we assume that they will be that various folks will be in touch with you about what you know about this business? Because you are calling for action to be taken.
Yes, I would be surprised if they didn't. But in any case, if they didn't, the French jurisdiction is one possibility. But there is the International Criminal Court, there is the International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda. There are other instruments even on the continent in Africa that we can appeal to. But clearly, the point I'm trying to make to Rwandans and to the international community is very basic. That in this day and age, a president who is responsible for having killed two other heads of state, including the president of Rwanda, having killed other members of their entourage, Burundians and French. Honestly, does Rwanda deserve to have a criminal for a president? And my answer is categorical and is an absolute no. That Rwandans do not deserve somebody like that who was killed. Not only, by the way, now we are talking about the issue of killing President Habyarimana and President of Burundi, Cyprien Ntaryamira, and their colleagues on the plane. So there are other crimes that Kagame has committed in Rwanda. He has committed in Congo. That will be another chapter on this show. But for now, we are talking about having killed people in a crime that in other parts of the world should actually have landed the Kagame in a jail. So my point is that Kagame should not simply, masquerade around, moving around in expensive planes on taxpayers' money, sleeping in expensive rooms, and appearing posh and a wise man. I do not. For those people who would like Kagame to be their president, they can take him. But I do not think that Rwandans deserve to have a criminal for a president.
Yes. Well, and the world shows great, through the United Nations, they address this matter of heads of state who are assassinated. They anticipate that there will be proper investigations.